Good evening. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Gadi Schwartz coming to you from Los Angeles. And here's some of the stories we're watching tonight. The Mississippi River keeps rising as thousands do everything they can to protect their homes. But the threat is far from over.
Scary. It really is. You know, you see on the news all the time people's houses all the way up to the roof line. I can't imagine.
One escaped inmate is dead, another caught, but 2 others are still possibly armed, dangerous, and on the run. Also, Brittney Griner is speaking out publicly for the first time since being released from a Russian jail.
You're going to be faced with adversities throughout your life. This was a pretty big one.
And a new drug originally used to treat diabetes could be a game changer for weight loss, but comes with some controversy.
I know that a lot of people want to think, oh, people should just be able to do this on their own and eat healthy food, but that's not always possible.
And effects that took weeks to pull off way back in the day, like way back last year, now take just hours. A look at the AI revolution that's happening right now in Hollywood.
I think it's going to, if anything, I think it'll create more opportunities for actors.
Tonight along the Mississippi River, so many people are facing a slow-moving disaster that is only getting worse. Melting snow and ice are making the river there rise higher and faster than normal. In Iowa, the governor has declared a disaster along the river. And in North Wabasha, Minnesota, get this, people have been preparing for this by flooding their homes before the flood, all with the idea of keeping dirty river water from seeping into basements. Here is what one business owner told a reporter with NBC Minneapolis.
If you don't fill the basement or the in structure of that, the force of the walls on the outside will collapse that building. If we neutralize the inside with the outside, the walls don't have no pressure.
Wild. And snow melt in the Midwest and plains is also making rivers swell, but not every town along the river can fill basements with clean water. And the only thing people can be sure of is that the water is going to keep rising. And joining us now from Davenport, Iowa, is NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa. Maggie, what's the water level looking like today?
I mean, Gadi, we've been talking, day after day, and day after day, it continues to progress. We've been calling this, as you know, our climate team calling it a slow motion disaster, and that seems incredibly accurate based on what we're seeing. I mean, typically, the Mississippi banks are several hundred yards that away, and obviously now we're standing in it, and we have several more days to go. We've been talking about when these levels are expected to crest, kind of up north. Thankfully, that's starting to happen in northern Minnesota and La Crosse, Wisconsin, levels cresting today, but farther south, kind of here in Iowa and Illinois, this water continuing to climb and expected to do so possibly into Monday. So we definitely have a long way to go, Gadi.
And Maggie, what happens to communities that have no floodgates to close? How do they handle the incoming rising water?
It's interesting. One of the reasons that, frankly, we came to Davenport is because that is actually the case here. It's not like they've closed all their floodgates or all their levees. They don't have any. It's kind of a local topic of conversation, as you can imagine, in a city this size who endures flooding to some degree every year. So what they do is they basically build walls of sandbags. We showed them a couple of nights ago. They're like big cubes of sand that are reinforced by a really thick kind of industrial cardboard and then steel. And that's what they use to keep a lot of this water kind of at bay along their waterfront. And then, frankly, it's a lot of good old-fashioned sandbagging outside of businesses and people who live, it's worth noting, in the low-lying areas that are river adjacent. They've just been forced to leave their homes, knowing that that happens every so often with these floods, and knowing this one in particular is on tap to be one of the worst, if not the worst, in Davenport's history. So a lot of kind of old-fashioned tactics in those scenarios, including here in Davenport, Gadi.
I've been reading so much about communities coming together, helping each other out. Have you seen that out there?
We definitely have. Yeah, I mean, it's, you drive downtown and you see people sandbagging and you say, maybe it's a bit jaded, but you say, do you all work here? And it's often a resounding no. In fact, we went to a body shop earlier today. The owner of the body shop had actually hired people to sandbag outside his shop. We came back an hour later to talk to him when he said he would be free. And he goes, do you see that guy over there? He just showed up and offered to help fill sandbags. We've been seeing that all over downtown, crews of people outside businesses who have kind of shown that they're going to put effort into doing that. So a lot of volunteer work and a lot of help for people who are fleeing homes, too. Shelters opening up, nonprofits offering help. So a lot of coordination and cooperation in these communities that, again, to some degree are used to this. But this is a historic flood event up and down the Mississippi River. And again, it's just going to go on for a while, probably into early next week, say forecasters. Gadi.
The best of humanity and some of the most alarming of times. Maggie, thanks so much. And heading now from the Mississippi River to the Gulf Coast, which is taking a beating right now. Strong storms are rolling through the states of Mississippi and eastern Florida. 12 million people are at risk of severe weather tonight, with torrential rain and even tornadoes possible. And just look at this. This is hail battering parts of Panama City Beach this afternoon. Let's bring in NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns with more. Bill, I know yesterday we were about to talk about what we were seeing as like grapefruit-sized hail. Did that turn out to be true?
I did actually see one report of a 4-inch hailstone. So they call that almost like softball size. So, yeah, that was pretty large. Not record breaking, but, you know, that was one of the bigger ones you'll see all year long. And as far as the flooding goes, it's just a slow motion disaster going down the Mississippi. Things are improving in Minnesota, so that's good for them. Now we're watching that crest heading downriver here from La Crosse towards Davenport. Then over the weekend, it'll head eventually all the way down into areas of Missouri. So we keep track of the rivers. If it's a purple dot, we call it major flooding to record flooding. And you notice we still have that along the Iowa-Illinois border and still numerous locations south of Minneapolis towards La Crosse. And the crest was happening today in areas around the Minnesota and Wisconsin border. Then as we go through the weekend, Dubuque and Davenport on Monday, and eventually we'll get this towards next week, cresting in almost all areas. So that's still, you know, it's still a lot of people are still watching it. Imagine, you know, it goes up an inch or two a day, and if it goes over your sandbags, then all of a sudden your property and house can get ruined.
And Bill, looking at the south here, what's the likelihood of tornadoes tonight?
We've had at least one tornado. We haven't had it confirmed yet. That'll happen tomorrow when they do the storm survey. But that was in areas of the Panhandle, North Florida. We had a lot of reports of hail. You showed some of the video there, Pensacola, Panama City. We had some huge hail near Jacksonville and Flagler Beach here near Palm Bay. And we still have a chance of isolated large hail as we go through the evening. The tornado threat, though, does appear to be diminishing. We have our severe thunderstorm watch that'll be out until 10 o'clock. And actually noticing even a very strong storm near the Space Coast with a tornado warning. So we can get those little minor spin-ups, but I'm not expecting any big tornadoes. Then tomorrow, we do it again. This is a new storm, by the way. This one will be developing over Texas. We'll watch closely the Dallas-Fort Worth area. A few tornadoes possible. Large hail all the way down to San Antonio and Austin. That's the greatest concern. Again, obviously, you don't want to get hit by a tornado, but we could get a lot of damage. And this is how the weekend plays out. So that first storm is here on the East Coast tomorrow. There's the second storm in the Midwest. These storms are going to follow each other closely. So Saturday's a rainy day in the Northeast, rainy day along the Gulf Coast, and then Sunday, that heavy rain threat goes all the way up the eastern seaboard. So, Gadi, as you're sitting there enjoying your sunshine and beautiful weather, just think about the rest of us that wish we could be outside this weekend.
I will feel bad for like 5 seconds. Bill, thanks so much.
Yeah.
And we got word late in the day today that former Vice President Mike Pence testified before a federal grand jury investigating his one-time boss, Donald Trump. Now, the special counsel is looking into whether Trump broke the law when he tried to overturn his 2020 presidential election loss. Pence is considered a key witness as Trump allegedly tried to get him to block or delay the certification of Joe Biden's win. Pence's testimony comes a day after federal appeals court rejected Trump's attempts to keep Pence from talking to the grand jury. NBC's Ryan Riley is outside U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. What do we know about Pence's appearance today?
It seemed like he spent a very long time with the grand jury here, because we saw vehicles, NBC News producers saw videos go inside the building early this morning, and we saw departures pretty much at the end of the day here. You know, we don't know for sure which of those vehicles Mike Pence was in, but we saw two different groups of SUVs. Essentially what they were able to do is drive him into this garage area, then bring them directly up to the third floor, which is where the grand jury meets. And because he was able to do that, he wasn't in any public areas where he would have been spotted by any members of the general public. So they were able to keep this, you know, pretty behind the scenes and secretive, because, of course, the grand jury process is typically secretive, although, you know, people who testify before a grand jury are free to speak of it. The grand jurors themselves are not supposed to speak of it, and the court, neither the court nor the Justice Department can formally speak in any way about what was happening behind those closed doors.
And yet his appearance didn't get by you. Who else can we expect to testify here?
That's a good question, but I think that we have seen, we don't know everyone who's testified, right? We only know what has sort of trickled out over time. But you would think that Pence would be one of the last people that they would want to get to, and that a lot of the people who are sort of setting the stage for, the star of this investigation, which is really Mike Pence, have already come and sort of told the grand jury a lot of information so that grand jurors can go and give, and throw back some questions at Mike Pence about what he saw. So they had a really good basis, presumably, for the questions that they are ultimately asking the vice president here, because that's kind of, your star witness is somebody you typically want to keep for the end here. He knew the most about this pressure campaign on him, really, right? He's the individual who has the most information about what Donald Trump was trying to do to his vice president in terms of putting pressure on him, because he was the subject of that pressure. So I think that, it's a pretty safe bet that he was probably towards the end, ultimately, of the individuals that Jack Smith wanted to put before that grand jury.
Ryan Riley, thanks for joining us. And tonight, 2 out of 4 inmates who escaped from a Mississippi jail are still on the run. Officials say they all broke out of the Raymond Detention Center on Saturday night through a hole in one of their cells. Today, police caught Jerry Raines, who had crossed state lines into Texas. Yesterday, escaped inmate Dylan Arrington was killed after a shootout in a standoff with police. Before that, Arrington killed a local pastor and stole his truck on Monday. NBC's Blaine Alexander has more from Jacksonville, Mississippi.
Well, Gadi, the sheriff here tells me that he believes those 2 escaped inmates, those remaining 2 that are on the run, are still here in the Mississippi area. Now, as for Raines, he was taken into custody in Texas, again, about 400 miles from where this all began. Officials tell us that it was actually a tip that led to him being arrested. He was taken into custody at a hospital in the Houston area. We're told that he was waiting to be discharged when police moved in. Now, of course, all of this is leading to more questions about just how these men were able to escape in the first place. I spoke with Sheriff Jones about this, and he walked me through the area that he believes that the men actually escaped, how they jumped from the roof. He tells me that it all started with a large hole in one of the cells. Take a look. So they literally walked across the roof,
right,
and then jumped off?
Jumped off the roof and went into this wooded area right here where they were able to escape the grounds of the facility at that particular time.
How were they able to escape so relatively easily?
Well, they were able to compromise a wall in the cell. Once they did that, they got access to the roof. They used some type of tool or something to be able to breach the roof and get out of the facility.
Now, as for Raines, we're told that he's awaiting extradition back to the Mississippi area. Officials say that they don't yet know whether he was traveling alone. Gadi.
Blaine Alexander, thank you so much. Now to San Francisco, where there's a case that is dominating headlines throughout the West Coast. That's where an alleged attack on a former fire commissioner by a homeless man just took a major twist. First, you should know that Don Carmignani claims that he was attacked by a homeless man with a metal pipe. But now there's this video that you're seeing here that paints a different picture. Someone who looks like Carmignani was going around earlier, this video that you're looking at, going around macing homeless people while they slept. Today, he was supposed to be in court, but after he didn't show up, the defendant was released. Sergio Quintana from our Bay Area station KNTV has more.
A series of new videos related to this case could change perceptions about what happened the evening of April 5th. That's the night former fire commissioner Dom Carmignani was beaten so badly his skull fractured. One clip shared by Carmignani's attorneys appears to show the accused attacker Garrett Gadi swinging a large metal object. Another clip shows Gadi picking the metal object out of a garbage can before the confrontation and, according to Carmignani's attorney, taking practice swings. But newly released videos from the San Francisco Public Defender's Office frame the incident differently. Gadi's defense attorney says one video shows Carmignani approaching her client with what looks like a can of bear spray, which she says provoked the attack. The public defender also released a second video from November 2021 showing a different, seemingly unprovoked attack on an unhoused person, which she alleges is related.
He sprays with a massive can of bear spray, the same weapon used in the Doty incident.
Public Defender Clay Hathaway claims they have reports of 7 other bear spray attacks on homeless people within a 4-block radius of Carmignani's home in the Marina District. But there was never an arrest or any citations in those incidents. Carmignani's attorneys say it's not their client in the bear spray video and vehemently deny their client being involved in any prior incidents. Those attorneys had also raised concerns that the DA would be dropping charges against Gadi amid claims of self-defense. San Francisco District Attorney Brooke Jenkins says that is not the case. During a news conference, DA Jenkins chalked those reports up to possible miscommunication by a rookie prosecutor.
A more experienced attorney has allowed us to make sure that we are making the right decisions in this case based on those nuances in the law.
Sergio Quintana, thank you so much. Still ahead, we are learning some crazy new details about the Air National Guardsman accused of leaking classified military documents. Prosecutors now say he posted online that he wanted to kill people and had an arsenal. More on that case when we come back. And we start tonight's trip around the world in 80 seconds in Israel with an overseas question to Ron DeSantis on whether he's running for president.
I've been focused on this mission that we've been doing. We're going to end up making it pretty much around the world by the time we're done. And if there's any announcements, those will come at the appropriate time. But it's not, if anyone's telling you that somehow they know this or they know that, that's just inaccurate because there's not been any decision.
DeSantis downplaying a story NBC News broke last night that he's set to jump into the presidential race as soon as the middle of next month, according to a number of Republican operatives. DeSantis is in Israel as part of what his office calls an international trade mission, which wraps up tomorrow in the UK. In Sudan today, both sides of a violent confrontation have agreed to extend a ceasefire to allow evacuations to continue, but the existing truce has not stopped the fighting. So far, more than 500 people have been killed and over 4,000 people have been hurt by the fighting since April 15th. And the Iranian Navy has taken control of a commercial oil tanker headed to the United States. That ship allegedly collided with an Iranian boat and attempted to get away. The tanker was chartered by Chevron and was carrying crude oil from Kuwait on its way to Houston. The U.S. Navy says it knows about what happened and is monitoring the situation. And the Air National Guardsman accused of leaking classified documents was back in a Massachusetts courtroom today. And there are some pretty shocking new revelations that had prosecutors asking the judge to keep 21-year-old Jack Teixeira behind bars. They allege he still has access to classified information and he poses a serious flight risk. NBC's Courtney Cuby has more.
Gadi, today a judge did not rule in a detention hearing for Jack Teixeira, the man accused of leaking a series of classified U.S. military documents. Teixeira, an Air National Guardsman assigned to Otis Air National Guard Base in Massachusetts, is alleged to have leaked potentially dozens, maybe hundreds of documents over the course of months while he was stationed at Otis Air National Guard Base working as an IT professional. Now, the judge today didn't rule, but both sides made their case. The defense, Teixeira's attorneys, arguing that he's not a flight risk and that his parents would be able to take him in and control any access to the internet. The prosecution, however, saying that he could potentially still have access to some classified documents and even leak them if he were released. The prosecution didn't actually provide any information for why they believe that to be the case. Now, in a series of documents that were just released before this detention hearing, it was clear that Jack Teixeira had weapons close to his bed, including a bazooka, at the time he was arrested. His parents said today in court that they would ensure that he would not have any access to any weapons. They've been removed from the house. In addition to that, these documents said that Teixeira had been posting a series of extremely violent comments and racist comments on social media for months prior to and maybe even during the time that he was leaking these documents. Now, in addition to this, we learned from the Air Force that 2 air officers who are assigned to Otis Air National Guard who worked with Jack Teixeira have been temporarily suspended from their duties. Now, both of them were in leadership positions above Teixeira. One of them was the squadron commander for the 102nd Air National Guard Intelligence Wing there at Otis Air Force Base. The other one was essentially the person who's in charge of the airmen who are National Guards members like Teixeira was, but assigned to active duty on that base. Again, both of them temporarily suspended during an Air Force Inspector General investigation and pending the outcome of that. Gadi?
Courtney Cubie, thanks so much. And today in Congress, they asked a simple question: what to do about crypto, which is a digital currency that, remember, was designed to live outside of government regulation. At least that was the idea when it first started. Today in Washington, a number of lawmakers seem to be intent on finding a way to regulate, but also maybe finding a way to fold it into financial markets.
How can you possibly have a well-regulated market in, say, Bitcoin futures when the majority of transactions in the underlying assets are fraudulent?
We don't trust our citizens. They can't do permissionless transactions. Everything's got to be permissioned. It seems like some of my colleagues actually think that's a good thing. I think it's kind of dystopian, personally.
We've all heard from firms like Coinbase that they will move offshore. The reality is that in this environment, it's hard to blame them.
And joining us now is Brendan Peterson, financial services reporter for Punchbowl News and author of the new newsletter, The Vault. Brendan, big picture here. What did you take away from today's hearing?
Thanks, Gadi. Yeah, this is actually a pretty interesting hearing, all things equal, because in a lot of ways, the two parties, Republicans and Democrats, are trying to answer fundamentally different questions about what to do with crypto. Republicans are pretty bought in at this point in terms of they like crypto. They think it has transformative potential as far as finance goes. But when it comes to Democrats, they're a bit more suspect. Basically, since the collapse of FTX, that crypto exchange that was kind of the gold standard for the industry up until last fall when it collapsed in a storm of fraud. Democrats are trying to figure out whether or not it belongs in the financial system in the first place, crypto. Republicans are trying to figure out the best way to do it, period.
And do you think today's hearing brought us any closer to, like, crypto accountability?
That's a great question. I mean, you heard Congressman Bill Foster of Illinois ask some pretty tough questions about what exactly crypto is supposed to be used for and what we can do to, sort of work against some of the more like criminally adjacent elements of crypto, right? When you're talking about things like anonymous transactions, that's like common with you and I using cash. But when you're talking about digital payments on a global scale, that's really easy for international criminals to use to move money all over the place. And that's ultimately what policymakers are most concerned about. They want to crack down on money laundering. And crypto makes that kind of hard.
So money laundering, but also, do you think there's any agreement across the aisle on how to regulate crypto, or possibly some like low-hanging fruit on what should be regulated? I'm thinking the debate on something like wash rules.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, there's a really interesting divide within the Democratic Party right now on this. I think Republicans are pretty much on the same page. Democrats, especially senior Democrats, are extremely suspect when it comes to crypto. Younger Democrats, like Richie Torres of New York or Wiley Nickel of North Carolina, they're a bit more open to the potential for crypto. And so I think we might see some bipartisan action here. Patrick McHenry, the chair of the House Financial Services Committee, the Republican, he has said he wants a bipartisan bill, and he's probably going to get it if he works with Richie Torres or Congressman Nickel. But I think in general, if you're looking for broad buy-in from the most senior Democrats, it's going to be harder to find.
Brendan Peterson, thanks so much. My subscription to The Vault is in your email. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks.
And coming up, move over Ozempic, a new diabetes drug, is showing a lot of promise for weight loss. But first, you got to see this. Don't those Secret Service agents seem kind of small? Well, that's because kids took over at the White House today as part of National Take Your Kids to Work Day. Kids of the White House staffers and reporters spent the day learning about the president during the press room. Even got to ask the White House press secretary some tough questions.
What is the president's position on gun violence relating to children?
Sounds like our reporters might have some competition. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's get you caught up in 30 seconds. One of the inmates who escaped from a Mississippi prison was arrested today in Texas. One of the other inmates was killed by police in a shootout yesterday. The two others are still on the run. And towns all along the Mississippi River are prepping for historic flooding this weekend. Some neighborhoods are already underwater. And former Vice President Mike Pence testified today in front of a federal grand jury. The investigation is looking into Donald Trump's possible efforts to overturn the 2020 election. And two of the biggest names in cable news lost their jobs this week. Don Lemon from CNN and Tucker Carlson at Fox News. And now one of them is speaking out on Twitter. Without mentioning Fox directly, Tucker instead took a broader approach, criticizing American media as a whole.
The undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources. When was the last time you heard a legitimate debate about any of those issues? It's been a long time.
Here's NBC's Stephanie Gosk with more on the Fox News fallout.
Off the air does not mean out of sight. Tucker Carlson's video on Twitter viewed nearly 20 million times.
The other thing you notice when you take a little time off is how unbelievably stupid most of the debates you see on television are.
Notably, Tucker Carlson did not mention Fox News, nor the reason for his departure. Messages revealed because of Dominion Voting Systems defamation lawsuit may have played a role. According to the New York Times, two people with knowledge of the discussions say the night before Fox settled the case with Dominion for nearly $800 million, top executives and board members learned of, quote, highly offensive and crude messages Carlson sent in the past, and it triggered a crisis. Fox has not publicly provided a reason for getting rid of Carlson. Meanwhile, the 8 p.m. audience on the Fox News channel Tuesday night was down about 50% from a typical night with Carlson.
Do you think he has the power to take those people who watched him loyally someplace else? And is there a platform that makes sense?
He undoubtedly has the power to take his audience from Fox News.
But maintaining the same influence may be harder.
When you are on television, you have a long tail on the internet. People are trading your videos. You don't get as long a tail when you do, fringe tuckercarlson.net.
A high-profile host out of a job, but not out of the public eye. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
So that's heartening.
An 11-year-old girl was killed during a Christmas parade in Raleigh, North Carolina last year, and police say she was hit by a truck during an event. Now her family is suing the driver along with several local organizations. Julian Grace from our NBC affiliate WRAL has more.
In these 56 pages, there were new revelations alleging the driver, 20-year-old Landon Glass, operated his truck that day on only 5 hours of sleep. The suit claims Glass lacked experience. He didn't have a commercial license, and he knew his modified truck would not pass safety inspections in both Virginia and North Carolina, but he drove it anyway. And on top of that, the suit claims Glass was aware his emergency brakes were not working the day of the parade.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's not surprising. I mean, I think this was always expected. Anytime someone is either injured or killed in an accident, you can expect, someone to make a claim for damages. I mean, that certainly is what they're entitled to.
That's Daniel Meyer. He has 15 years experience in dealing with civil lawsuits. He went over the pages with us, including why the suit names 4 other defendants, including CC&Co Dance Complex, Greater Raleigh Merchants Association, Shop Local Raleigh, and D&L Floats.
They basically are trying to get as many people involved in the lawsuit and alleged negligence and wrongful acts against as many people as possible, because that protects you in case one person doesn't either have enough finances or enough insurance to adequately cover the claim.
The suit also accused Brooks Dance Group CC&Co of disregarding the safety of dancers by allowing Glass to bring the truck to the parade and cutting corners in order to save money. And the day of the parade, the lawsuit states Brooks was brought to the hospital as a Jane Doe, and CC&Co was so disorganized and unprepared from a safety perspective that its staff could not confirm Haley Brooks's identity after she was hit by the truck.
This is a case that will likely settle. The insurance companies will essentially get involved, and they will work together to reach a settlement.
Our thanks to WRAL's Julian Grace for reporting. Global obesity rates are skyrocketing. There's a recent report out that says more than half of the world's population is on track to be obese by 2035, and more than 40% of American adults are already living with obesity, all while the weight loss industry grows bigger and bigger.
This report by the World Health Organization showed that obesity has nearly tripled since 1975 and continues to rise. There are more than 1 billion people clinically obese globally, of whom 650 million are adults, 340 million are adolescents, and 39 million are children. This is why analysts believe the obesity treatment market could reach more than $50 billion by the end of the decade.
And drugs like Ozempic, which was approved to treat diabetes, is being touted as a miracle for weight loss, especially from celebrities and people on social media.
I lost so much weight so fast that I was like, oh my God, this is magic. This is amazing.
I'm going to start Wegovy because I am a plus size individual and I don't want to be plus size anymore and I want to be healthier.
I lost 75 pounds in 7 months and I've had a lot of people asking me, how did I do it?
Well, now there is a new drug that is already used to treat diabetes that could also be hitting the market soon, with the company behind it trying to fast-track its FDA approval. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Vin Gupta joins me now. Dr. Gupta, this seems like a lot of this is moving extremely fast. A lot of headlines today about how this is a game changer. What do you think?
Well, Gadi, good evening. Thank you for having me. I do think that this is a transformational moment for healthcare and public health more broadly across the world for the reason you mentioned in the setup, which is obesity is the second leading cause of disability in the United States, fourth leading cause of death. We've seen it skyrocket as an epidemic. 40% of U.S. adults qualify or meet criteria for obesity. So this is a big moment here. We have not had this type of transformational moment where we've had drugs come on the market that are point solutions. I think Mounjaro is a big deal coming from Eli Lilly. What we're seeing, Gadi, is from initial results that they published in the New England Journal last year, amongst those that were obese without diabetes, on average, they were losing about 52 pounds or about 20% their starting weight. That's almost double the amount of weight loss we've seen with Wegovy. And frankly, Ozempic has worse results than Wegovy. So if this remains true, the FDA really is likely going to approve it for a weight loss indication. The results are extraordinary.
And what about side effects?
You know, we do see, because this really what these medications do is they mimic a full appetite. And so they convince your stomach that you've eaten even if you haven't eaten. They mimic satiety. What it does cause, though, is nausea, vomiting, in some cases, other GI upset type symptoms. They're rare, but they can happen. But these are really well-tolerated drugs at scale, Gadi. We're seeing most patients that are prescribed these medications for weight loss or for diabetes tolerate them quite well, no severe side effects. So that's very encouraging.
And what do you tell a patient who starts asking about these so-called miracle weight loss drugs?
You know, I think there's a few questions that we have to figure out in the coming months and weeks or years ahead, frankly. What happens if somebody discontinues one of these medications? We've seen celebrities take these medications. Again, we're probably going to have two really powerful medications soon on the market, largely without insurance coverage. I should emphasize that. Access is a problem right now. Very expensive, few insurance options. So that's a big gap here right now. Number one, a lot of my patients can't afford this medication, even if they wanted to start it. But the big question here from a medical standpoint, let's put aside access for a moment. From a medical standpoint is what happens if you stop this medication? You've lost 20 pounds, you look good, you feel good, you want to continue on it, but let's say you can't afford it, or your doctor feels like you've had enough and you've done a 12-month course, for example. We don't know what happens when you stop the medication. Do you gain back the weight? Do you keep it off? We've seen some anecdotal reports, Gadi, that people look good, they feel good, and it creates a virtuous cycle where they have lifestyle changes that persist and they keep the weight off. So a lot remains to be seen.
Any warnings here?
Well, you know, I would say that right now, there's a lot of off-label prescribing of these medications. So we're seeing a lot of physicians, a lot of my peers out there prescribe these medications outside the bounds of what FDA has approved for. So I think that one right there is a key warning, that we should not be permitting this type of off-label prescribing, because to the point made earlier, Gadi, we don't know what happens if you stop the medication. Well, frankly, we're still learning about side effects. We think the side effect profile is benign, but we're learning as we're going. Things are moving fast, to your point earlier. So as we're learning, it's important to make sure that we're prescribing per the bounds of the FDA, minimizing off-label prescribing, and making sure that anybody that's starting these medications, if you are watching this and you're starting this medication, sign up for a clinical trial so we can see what happens. And in particular, what happens if you decide to stop the medication to keep the weight off. So lots of key unknowns here, but a lot of promise.
Dr. Van Gupta, thanks so much. And up next, the future of everything, and we are talking about driverless cars today. They can be pretty cool when they're working right. Vehicles are stalling, though, in Phoenix, and they are holding up traffic. That story's next, so stay tuned. And here's some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. In Washington, a jury is deliberating the fate of 5 Proud Boy leaders who have been charged with seditious conspiracy for their role in the January 6th riot. And today was their first full day of deliberations, and they'll be back tomorrow for a half a day of deliberations. Over in New York, the Trump civil rape case continued today, with writer E. Jean Carroll saying again that she was raped by Donald Trump. She was cross-examined by the Trump team, whose lawyer repeatedly suggested that she made the whole thing up. That trial will resume on Monday. In Wisconsin today, a freight train derailed along the Mississippi River, sending 2 of the cars actually into the river before they eventually washed ashore. Now, some of the train cars were carrying paint and lithium-ion batteries, but officials insist there is no threat to the public. The woman who accused black teenager Emmett Till of making advances towards her over 50 years ago died in hospice care in Louisiana. She was 88 years old. Till's kidnapping in 1955 and lynching became a flashpoint in the civil rights movement after shocking photos of his open casket funeral were published. And controversial talk show host Jerry Springer died today after a fight with pancreatic cancer. The Jerry Springer Show, known for its confrontational style and wild antics, ran for nearly 30 years, ending in 2018. Springer was also the former mayor of Cincinnati. He was 79 years old. And getting stuck in traffic is always annoying. Even if you live in LA, you never get used to it. But what if it's a self-driving car causing that traffic jam? William Pitts, with our affiliate in Phoenix, has more.
We're not perfect drivers. Every once in a while, we go somewhere we're not supposed to go. We stop where we're not supposed to stop, and a cop has to come tell us to move. But who do you talk to in one of these? Traffic stuck, drivers yelling. Except that guy's not yelling at anyone, because these are fully driverless Waymos. There's no one in them.
This is a Waymo traffic jam, maybe the first ever.
Spoiler, it's not the first. Apparently, driverless cars get stuck every so often. It just hasn't happened that often in Phoenix.
Ain't nobody in it.
This is a driverless car from a company called Cruise.
This is crazy.
Getting pulled over in San Francisco for not having its headlights on, but no one to give a ticket to. Other driverless cars have gotten stuck on dead-end streets in San Francisco.
Sir, we cannot move. We're sorry.
A Phoenix police officer tried to tell this one where to go, unsuccessfully.
We're not driving.
Driverless Waymo traffic jam in Phoenix.
It's clearly a glitch in the system, so I haven't seen anything quite as big as this with a number of Waymos being confused.
Andrew Maynard studies self-driving cars at ASU. He's not surprised they get stuck.
When you're dealing with a system where it's using sensors to detect what everything else is doing, as soon as you get 2 or 3 of those together, you're going to have unexplained and unexpected consequences.
Programming these things is really, really hard. It's basically trying to rewrite the part of your brain that drives a car and then stick it inside the car. Not everything always works out right.
12 Waymos without drivers.
Maynard says he doesn't know why they get stuck. He's not sure anyone's figured it out completely. After all, if they did, it wouldn't happen.
Companies are working on this, but I think there are some glitches to iron out. I don't think that they're critical glitches, but we've got to work out what happens when something really unusual happens and you really need a human in place.
Waymo told us these cars did get stuck and sent a statement saying, "We have teams and systems in place to assist the vehicles when needed, and our operations team cleared the vehicles once they arrived on location. We've identified the software that contributed to this situation and made appropriate updates across our fleet." Waymo also said they met with Phoenix PD later on to talk about what happened and what they can do if and when it happens again. William Pitts, 12 News.
All right. Well, we've already got driverless cars. Are actorless films next? Seriously, with AI taking over, it is a legit question these days. And CNBC's Julia Borston has more.
Hollywood production is being transformed by artificial intelligence. Deep Voodoo is a visual effects company that specializes in what they call facial replacement AI.
What's a funny face I should make? Like.
In about 30 minutes, they scanned my every expression to learn my facial movements. And 2 weeks later, we put the algorithm to the test with a body double and a live camera.
Okay, here we go.
Oh my God. That's so weird. Not my hair, but it's totally my face.
While visual effects have a long history in Hollywood, Deep Voodoo's precision and live render feature have won over celebrities like Kendrick Lamar, who use their technology to wear the faces of other celebrities.
In a traditional VFX scenario, it would be stuck in post and they wouldn't be able to see it until it was a finished shot.
So you can have actors wear the mask of another actor's face while they're shooting the movie, rather than having to wait until it's all done to do the face swap.
Absolutely, yeah. Julie, you don't have to show up for work anymore.
Deep Voodoo says it's working with studios to put actors' faces on stunt doubles and even to revive deceased movie stars.
How much does your technology threaten people's jobs?
This enables people to do their jobs quicker, better, and cheaper, but it's a creative tool, and it needs to be operated by creative people.
But with all of this new technology come new concerns. The Screen Actors Guild telling us, quote, "Our goal is to ensure that our members are protected from unauthorized use of their names, voices, and likenesses. We intend to expand those protections as AI uses are addressed."
On movie sets like this one, AI is not only being used to clone actors' faces and voices, it's also being deployed to do CGI and visual effects faster and easier than ever before.
Wonder Dynamics quickly transformed me into these characters. Their AI technology can replace a human actor with a computer-generated figure in hours.
It's waving its arms around the way I move my hands when I talk.
Actor and company co-founder Ty Sheridan was inspired to improve visual effects after his experience wearing motion capture sensors on Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One.
We always wanted to tell stories that were bigger than our pockets, and that's really kind of what led us to starting this company.
Along with his co-founder Nikola Todorovic, Sheridan is hoping to make premium visual effects easier and more affordable. A 1-minute scene like this would normally take weeks to render.
With our technology, we're really hoping to bring it to a day or a couple of hours, depending on what shot is.
So it becomes much faster, but also more cost efficient.
Exactly, and more accessible, because all you need is a browser, web browser, and a camera.
Wonder Dynamics says hundreds of thousands of users have signed up to try its platform, and productions in the works for Netflix are already using it.
So is it going to eliminate the need for actors?
Absolutely not. I've never put myself out of work. No, I think it's going to, if anything, I think it'll create more opportunities for actors to be in these type of films.
And if it works, what used to be science fiction can become an AI reality. Julia Borston, NBC News, Los Angeles.
The future is here, whether we like it or not. Before we go, Brittney Griner is speaking out publicly for the first time since getting out of Russian detention.
You find a way to just grind it out. Just put your head down and just keep going. Just keep moving forward.
And some breaking news tonight out of Alaska. U.S. Army officials say 2 Apache helicopters based at Fort Wainwright have crashed near the town of Healy. Now, it's unknown what the conditions of those on board are at this moment, but Army officials say the helicopters were returning from a training flight when that crash occurred. This incident is still under investigation, and we're going to bring you updates as this story develops. Meanwhile, it is a life-changing opportunity, one that young football players dream about for their entire lives, the chance to play for the NFL. And right now, as we speak, that dream is becoming a reality for some of the league's newest players, as round 1 of this year's NFL draft is officially underway. But here's the thing. For a growing number of college players, the incentive to hurry up and make that money in the pros is not what it used to be. NBC's Aaron Gilchrist explains.
Every year, football fans tune in for the anticipation of the NFL draft to find out where promising college players will start their professional careers. But this year, that incoming class of quarterbacks is looking different.
The first-round quarterbacks, there's still plenty of talent there. But as you go later into the drafts, that's where it gets really thin. And one veteran NFL agent described it to me as an anemic class for the quarterbacks as far as depth.
2023 is one of the first years where NFL fans will see the full impact of massive NCAA rules changes made in 2021. The first change lets college athletes profit off their name, image, and likeness. The second was a loosening of transfer rules, which allowed athletes to more easily jump to new programs where they may be valued even higher.
These quarterbacks who might be drafted between the 4th and the 7th rounds, they are getting offers that are similar to the money that they would make in the NFL to keep them in college or to recruit one to transfer to your school. The range that we're talking is anywhere between $200,000 to over $1 million.
That money's not enough to stop the biggest names in the sport from leaving, guys like Alabama's Bryce Young or Ohio State's C.J. Stroud. But there's a second tier of big names like LSU's Jaden Daniels, Oregon's Bo Nix, and Notre Dame's Sam Hartman, all staying in college because of those major NIL deals. Nix even signing one with Bose for an undisclosed amount. For some, it's also about developing more as a player for a better NFL career down the line.
I'd have been leaving money off the table if I was to go this year.
Quarterback Cam Ward chose to stay at Washington State instead of entering the draft.
I feel like for me, it was just more of getting my frame together, getting my body right, getting my mechanics right to my footwork, and hopefully, a couple more months I go earn some big-time money.
Spending another year in college can help players hone their skills, increasing their likelihood of getting picked earlier and playing when they do enter the draft.
We saw Joe Burrow, the Bengals quarterback. He transferred to LSU. He had an incredible year. He becomes a, first-round pick.
For players like Ward, it's also about pursuing other important life goals, like finishing his college education.
The NFL has been a long way to go that I want to accomplish, and, graduation is first, though.
And giving back.
For me, NIL has been a blessing. I've been able to help my sisters and mom's AAU basketball team, help them travel. I've also been able to make impact on lives from the U to my camp I'm hosting, and even my teammates.
All the results of new rules giving young players more power to choose when they're ready for the big leagues.
And today, Brittney Griner spoke at length for the first time since being released after being held for 10 months in a Russian prison.
I'm no stranger to hard times, so. See, you cried and you made me cry. Just digging deep, honestly. You're going to be faced with adversities throughout your life. This was a pretty big one, but I just kind of relied on my hard work, getting through it. I know this sounds so small, but, dying in practice, and just hard workouts. You find a way to just grind it out. Just put your head down and just keep going. Just keep moving forward.
All of this coming today as a mural was unveiled in downtown Phoenix that shows Griner and the faces of some others who are being detained right now. Griner and her WNBA team, the Phoenix Mercury, also announced that they are partnering with a campaign called Bring Our Families Home that's working for Americans wrongfully detained overseas. Joining us now is NBC's Nyala Charles. Nyala, we've known some of the details of her detention, but hearing her describe in her own words what happened, what was that like?
Well, it was really emotional for her, Gadi, but she didn't go into the specifics about what she specifically faced there in Russia for security reasons, but she did say how it mentally affected her, how she had to keep hope in order to know she could get back here. She said for her, it all came down to hope that she'd one day be able to return to her family. Take a listen.
There was a little bit of a delay in getting news sometimes, but I was aware of the efforts and everything that was going on. I was able to see pictures sometimes, and those times where I was able to see what was going on, it definitely, it made me a little bit more comfortable. It made me a little bit have hope, which is a really hard thing to have.
And she says she also wants to bring hope to the other Americans still wrongfully detained abroad. Right now, more than 60 of them across various countries. That's why this mural is here right outside of the arena where she plays for the Phoenix Mercury, Gadi, because she says when people come here, when fans come to support her, she wants to make sure the attention also goes to them so that they can find their way back home as well. Gadi?
And did she say anything about how she plans on moving forward? I heard her talking a little bit about pouring herself into practice. Anything else on that?
Yeah, I asked her that actually, Gadi, and she says everything means a little bit more now. Walking into the facilities here, going to get to play with her teammates, getting to even do difficult workouts. It's funny, she mentioned that she's willing to do however many suicides, Gadi, that her coach wants her to do because she says anything is better than what she was experiencing there in Russia.
quite a perspective. And when could we see her back on the court?
Well, the home opener here for the Phoenix Mercury will be on May 21st. So that's going to be really emotional, too. She missed last season because she was detained. And there, fans would come screaming for her return, bring back Brittney. So for them to see her now back here at home playing, and that's going to be quite the sight. And we do know, Gadi, she's going to be releasing a memoir in the spring of next year that will further explain what she went through there in Russia. Gadi?
All with that striking mural behind you with so many other faces that are often forgotten. Nyla, thanks so much. And that does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow, but until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.